Oh, yeah, I put it away. It's warm. I know. It's kind of humid today. It's kind of warm out.
Okay, it's 4 o'clock. It is May 16th, year 2023. We are the Carmel-by-the-Sea City Council. Call to order the special meeting. City Council. Do a roll call, please.
Yes. Councilmember Barron?
Here.
Councilmember Dramoff?
Here.
Councilmember Ferlito?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards?
Here.
Mayor Potter?
Yeah.
All are present.
Jeff, would you be kind enough to lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. Okay, first order of business then is public appearance. It's an item, opportunity for any member of the public to comment on an item that is not on tonight's agenda. It's a wide open forum. If you come home forward, state your name for the record, I'd appreciate it. There's a 2-minute limitation on that testimony. First speaker.
Good evening, I'm David O'Neill, and I just wanted to say I'm representing a number of people who are very concerned about the amount of things that we've got on our agenda for this year. There's a lot of changes going on, and we're all feeling a little overwhelmed. We're wondering if maybe we could postpone the parking situation just until we kind of get some of these other things under wraps. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Is there anybody else wishing to speak tonight?
Hello,
Zoom
Linda
world, Mayor
Calafiore.
Potter.
I just wanted to say that I'm proud that the council is tackling so many items this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to speak in the room? I don't see anybody in the room. Is there anybody in Zoom world wishing to speak?
We do have someone with their hand raised, phone number ending in 258.
Yes,
258, you have the floor. You can go ahead and speak now.
Mayor Potter, may I speak?
Yes, you may.
Good afternoon, Mayor Potter and council members. Michael McWalter, Scenic Road 2 north of 11th. Following my remarks, public appearances at the May 2nd City Council meeting and last Wednesday at the Planning Commission meeting, I discovered an article from the Annals of Clinical and Medical Case Reports, and it's titled Nordic Appeal, More Stringent Regulatory Framework on Microwave Radiation from Wireless Technologies is Needed, Stop Further Rollout of 5G. I'm going to be forwarding this to you, Mayor Potter and council members. These are 9 scientists from Sweden, Finland, Norway, and Denmark, and essentially they've done research on 5G radio frequency radiation, and it shows that 5G radio frequency radiation can cause brain damage and possibly lead to dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And they did 2 studies, and the first study showed the impact of 5G, and the first was a case study that showed that a 5G base station caused an extreme increase in microwave radiation in an apartment. Residents suffered typical symptoms of exposure to microwave radiation within a few days, including severe sleep disturbances, dizziness, skin complaints, concentration problems, tinnitus, impaired short-term memory, confusion, fatigue, tendency to depression, heart and lung symptoms, heart palpitations, and heaviness across the chest. They call for new urgent measures, new guidelines needing to be developed to protect against all demonstrated health and environmental risks at levels far below the current reference values. And they also recommend that 5G deployment be halted until an independent commission without any connections to the wireless industry can investigate all of the risks. So in conclusion, I would like to ask the City Council and the Planning Commission and the residents of Carmel-by-the-Sea to consider a halt on the 5G rollout until all of these risks can be investigated so we can make an informed decision. Thank you, Mayor Potter. Thank you, council members.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate your testimony. Carol Hall, you have your hand up, I believe.
Yes, thank you. I agree with the 5G radiation findings, and that it would be great if we could put that off for quite a while. Also, I agree that, which I have spoken about before, the overload of issues, and so appreciate all the work that's being done, but think that it's just hard to keep up with it all, probably for all of us. And consequently, the parking issue, I think, could be deferred, in my judgment, forever, but at least deferred as an issue to be discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Is there anybody else wishing to speak tonight? I don't see anybody. Do you?
There's no other hands raised.
All right, thank you. We'll close the public comment period and move on then to our action items tonight. First one is to receive a presentation on the 2023-2024 budget. Chip, would you like to kick this off before we go to Maxine?
Just a couple words of thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I wanted to thank the staff again for their hard work on this, especially Maxine and Jane Hogan and the executive team and the folks in finance, our finance division. I think we've responded to some of the questions that you asked and the direction you provided. So there is a revised budget that was issued to you. And I wanted to thank the public for their thoughtful questions as well. And so again, this is a Q&A. Those questions are, please continue to provide questions. Mr. Byrne, for example, had a list of questions today, some of which Maxine will touch on and Bob and I can answer if necessary. We're receiving questions through this Friday the 19th. And again, questions that come in, we will answer them. We'll get you answers, council, and then we'll have the full docket of questions at your proposed adoption hearing on June 6th. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. Maxine, welcome.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm here to go over our fiscal year 23-24 recommended budget. I'm excited for this workshop to get more direction and guidance. So please know that as I go through this presentation, I have incorporated some of the questions that have come in through council and those that have come in through the public as well. So I will be incorporating some of the responses. But those questions that were submitted by the 11th were part of the attachments that went out with this agenda as attachment 4. So just as Chip noted, just want to again give a special thanks to the finance team, especially Jane Hogan and Kelly, our great team behind, and the executive team who really just pulled together so that we could present this budget to you. So I'm going to start off with our revenues, about where our money comes from, and just discuss the overall trends and the strategic process behind what we are forecasting and estimating, and really focus on the major revenue streams along with revenues going forward into 23-24. So revenues at a glance, you will see primarily out of the 30.9 million, if you can see it, I know it's pretty small, but 81% comes from our taxes, our property taxes, sales tax, Measure C, transient occupancy tax. So you see that about 81%, which is close to 25 million, comes from those sources. From a historical perspective, you will see some of the trends. One of the interesting factors that you will see, and again, I know I have a lot of data on here, but you will see that our TOT is starting to, I call, revert back to pre-pandemic levels. So you're starting to see this slow change in our TOT, our sales. Our property tax is, again, remaining pretty steady. And one of the spreadsheets, or one of the tables that I did share at the last presentation that has been updated, I wanted to clarify some of the reasons why it's been modified. So let's see if I can. So primarily in this chart that was presented to council on May 2nd, in the fiscal year 22-23 estimated actual, you will see that for both the sales tax in the new, I call, spreadsheet, has decreased about 123,000, and Measure C has increased about 1.15 million. So I'm referring to this new chart that was in the revised budget book that was distributed for this workshop. But I wanted to highlight those were the two changes so that you could see that was brought up as one of the questions as to what those changes were. As indicated, our property tax, we are estimating just reliable, steady growth for fiscal year 23-24. In addition, we did talk with HDL, who is our consultant when it comes to predicting our taxes for 23-24, and we are going to remain vigilant in understanding what the consumer spending patterns look like for this upcoming fiscal year. So we are very guarded on our projections, especially for TOT, due to uncertainty of travel and consumer spending. One of the questions that we did receive from Councilmember Ferlito was about the TOT in other jurisdictions. So this is just a summary of all the different cities in Monterey County and their current TOT tax rate. What I didn't add on here was that we also, just the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea does have that additional 2% HID. So we're kind of de facto 12% when it comes to the tax rate. So I did want to just make sure that I added that information in there.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
We have 3 hotels out of commission right now, correct?
Correct.
And could that be possibly part of the TOT
Absolutely.
decrease?
Yes.
Okay.
And those are the things that we do take into consideration.
And so the statistics that we send you bi-monthly are corrected for the number of units that are out.
Okay.
So there's roughly 10% of our stock that's currently that's under renovation. So Jane corrects our statistics based on hotels that are not in commission.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for setting me up for the next slide, which is the things that we do take into consideration about what is happening just in the world, in real estate. And so these are some of the things that we want to pay attention to strategically. One of the concerns, as I'm sure everyone is aware of, that on Friday, Governor Newsom announced the California budget with a $31.5 billion deficit. So that is very concerning, seeing that happen at the state level. Again, these are all the things that we are taking into consideration as we have estimated our revenues. So again, just kind of going to provide an overall picture of what our charges for services are. Overall, it's about $28 million. Other revenue that comes in is about 3.2, which is our business license tax, franchise fees, motor vehicle license fees, donations, grants, and transit. In summary, we will again end fiscal year 22-3 in good form. We will continue to remain diligent and cautious as we face economic uncertainty and instability due to rising interest rates, post-pandemic conditions, and market volatility. With this new reality, new normal after the pandemic, we're again going into what Councilmember Ferlito asked about hotel occupancy. We do have 10% of stock out of commission right now. What is that going to look like when they do return back online? What are the travel patterns going to be for consumers? Are they going to still continue to want to drive to our destination, or more visitors going to want to travel outward? So these are all the things that we are trying to balance and not heavily weigh one side or the other. We will continue to remain conservative and prudent and take the middle ground. So we do, just one thing to add is that if for some reason our estimates and what we are asking council to approve in our budget, we also have mid-year to do any course corrections. So that is also another opportunity that council will have, is during mid-year to make any course corrections one way or the other. So that is our revenues outlook in general. And next I will go to our expenditure side.
Well, they're changing PowerPoint presentations, Council. We received a report from at Visit Carmel last week, and it still appears that the drive market is the strongest component of visitors to Carmel and the Monterey Peninsula, with upwards, Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, about 70% are still driving here. So that's why, again, most of our visitors come from the Bay Area and the East Bay, lesser so from Los Angeles, even lesser so from San Diego. And then the fly market, which is increasing with the additional flights to places like Dallas and Denver and Seattle. They represent about 30%, 35% of the visitor traffic.
As we just finished up with revenue, now we're going to talk about how we're going to spend all that money. We're going to focus on our general fund. I know we've had a lot of discussion about our capital, so that's going to be very minimal. And then our debt. In addition to, at the end, we do want to receive direction for any changes. But based on what happens at this workshop this evening, we will then present the budget for adoption at the next meeting on June 6th. So that is just the process. So, budget for the fiscal year 23-24, budget at a glance. As you will see again, our revenue is coming in about $31 million. For our expenditures, general fund expenditures, $26 million. Debt service is about $528. Pension unfunded liability mitigation expenditures is about $3 million. CIP is about $10.9 million, and our workers' comp expenditures about $90,000. Again, it's about a $40.9 million budget, and we are requesting the use of fund balance of about $9.9 million. We also have 96 positions. So the question usually asked is, where does this $40.9 million go? And I just try to break it down to the 4 sources, and really that's our employees. And when I talk about our employees, that's our salaries and benefits, that's the pension, mitigation, unfunded liability, and workers' comp. So anything related to our employees fund-wise. And then the $11.2 million is, our community, our operating expenditures. And then the $10.9 million is the CIP that was presented to you at the last council meeting, and about $500,000 in debt service. So that, in I call real high level snapshot, represents our $40.9 million budget. And so one of the questions that we did receive was, if we were to propose cutting the budget by 10%, if I received direction, how would we go about doing it? And it really goes back to these, I call these 3 sources between employees, community, and CIP. If we were given the direction to cut 10%, which is about $4 million, we would look at those core areas and bring back some options to council on how to proceed. But those would be the 3 areas that we would look at. And this was unfortunately an exercise that we did do once the pandemic hit, where we did have to look at, I call salaries and benefits, we looked at our CIP, we looked at operating, and those were the things that were brought to City Council. So we would basically be doing the same exercise if that was the direction from City Council. So expenditures, again at a glance, as you will see, our salaries and benefits are about $15 million. Outside services, which is all contractual services, is 8.3. Other expenditures about 2.9. Our pension is $3 million. CIP is 10.9, and our debt service is 528. Again, this is inclusive of that $1 million set aside for the Section 115 trust that we started per council's direction, and we will be doing for the next couple of years.
Matt, excuse me, don't we have a savings account that we set aside for as well? Where does that money come from? Like, we're required to save.
Are you talking about our reserve?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, yes, we do put money aside in our reserves. It's 15%. So that was one of the, I call, council directions as well when we did the pension mitigation, was that we increased our reserve from 10 to 15%. Yes, that we do set aside.
So is that on this dollar bill?
It is.
It'd be the last in the fund balance,
Correct.
Which is restricted reserves. So we'll
Correct.
get to that. I think it's one of the last slides,
Yeah.
Council Member.
Yeah, thank you. This is more, the dollar bill is more by function, sorry, Bobby, Councilmember Richards. This is more by, I call function of the department. So this just shows overall from the department how we're split up with, again, administration's about 8%, citywide 11%, council's 1%, legal's 1%, and so on for each of the departments. And that's really just kind of giving just a high level per function within the organization. The next is our staffing. So again, we are at 96.23 full-time employees, and that was our budget last year. It's the same, we're holding steady. The only key difference that we have changed minimally in our budget is that for some of our, I call flexibly staffed classifications, we are budgeting at the higher level. And this does a couple of things. This ties into one of the questions that we received about staff turnover and our trend rate. And we've had about 57 employees separate, full-time employees separate since 2018, which is about 60% of our personnel, which is a huge impact to the organization. And one of the things that I know Council's core value and ours we've been working on is we've been taking proactive steps in our compensation packages, our benefit packages. We're looking at employee engagement and satisfaction. And so again, staffing, I call at the higher rate, provides another, I call tool in our toolbox. Should a vacancy occur, we have that flexibility to come and hire at a certain level. This does not mean automatic promotions for anybody. This does not mean that, again, anyone just automatically goes in there. It's based on an operational need, if the city needs it, and or if a vacancy should occur, it does provide us that flexibility of how we want to best serve this organization with that position. On that note of staffing, this is kind of overall how salaries and benefits is split between the different departments. So again, we have city council, which doesn't really show up as 0%, administration at 2.3, community planning and building 1.7, police is at 5 million, ambulance at 1.3, public works is at 3.1, and library and community activities is about 1.4. So diving into each department, I'm just again going to provide a very high level of their operating budget. We do, for example, council. I'll start with council. You have your grants. We have a $30,000 placeholder in there based on the last council meeting that you provided us. Our mail service has increased to $63,000. We also have some regional memberships, which is about $49,000, and you can find those specifics in the budget book. As for legal, our city attorney, everything has stayed status quo. We remained with the same amount of $360,000 for legal services, the $7,000 for an annual evaluation, and then we do have additional, I call specialized city attorney services for personnel-related investigation, negotiations, and then specialized counsel for services such as wireless communications. So that is staying status quo. The next is Office of the City Administration, which is admin, clerk, finance, IT, and HR. And there really wasn't a big, I call, change except for in one of our divisions, which was in IT. And that was one of our questions that we did receive from the public. And what we did this year for IT was several departments had subscriptions such as Fresh Desk and iWorks. And so what we tried to do, or what we are doing this year, is pulling out anything subscription related and bringing it into the IT budget so that we can really see true costs of what it costs to run the city just overall. So that's why you see such a dramatic increase in the IT budget. And again, it's our cloud infrastructure, it's cybersecurity, it's all the licenses for Office and Windows software, and again, the planning and public works, permits and licensing software. So that is what is the reason behind the increase in IT. In our non-departmental, again, has stayed pretty much the same. Our insurance In claims is $843,000. Between our UAL, Section 115 Trust and Retiree, that's about $3 million. Our utilities are about $230,000. Forest Theater, we do have that $10,000 budgeted. Our tax assessment is about $84,000, and then tax collection admin fee is about $74,000 in our non-departmental. The next is our marketing, and I know we're going to have some probably presentations later, but this again pretty much has stayed the same. We're $750,000 for the Sunset Center operational grant. We have $204,000 recommended for MCCVB. We have $120,000 for Visit Carmel. We have $60,000 in the recommended for the chamber, although they did request $120,000, so that will also be something that we will need direction on. And then also at the last meeting, we did receive a request from the Carmel Youth Center for $50,000 a year for 5 years, and it is not reflective in this budget yet, or that's up for discussion. One of the questions about the MCCVB about could we pay, council member gave us that recommendation, could we do the pay-as-you-go? And so this year we are going to do the pay-as-you-go on actuals, and this will allow us that should we need to make any adjustments, we'll come back at mid-year and make those mid-year adjustments. But we will continue with the placeholder of $204,000 and pay as we go. But again, once we kind of assess if we do need additional dollars, we will be bringing that back to council at mid-year. For our library, again, hoping to restore Saturday hours, full staffing proposed for both libraries. For community activities, we have $36,000, which is a slight decrease from fiscal year 22-23. Community promotion costs for city events, CAC initiatives, farmers market, and implement Citizens Academy, which was a $57,000 increase from fiscal year 22-23. And that was actually one of the questions that we received. And again, this adds more funds towards the farmers market third Thursday. Again, our programs and events, community promotions, music, and other market improvements, signage, display, and equipment. So that is where the increases came in for community activities. Next, we have planning and building. We have our contract services that is inclusive of the affordable housing studies, the historic context update, the building plan and fire system review, scanning and digitizing. And again, as you know, we discussed, we definitely want training, conferences for employees to go to conferences, professional memberships to increase department personalization and growth. So that continues within the planning and building department. Next, we have Public Works, and we did receive a lot of questions, so I will be, again, inclusive of some of the questions that we received. As you will see, facility maintenance, our janitorial services is about $272,000. We have facility repairs, our alarm monitoring, required building and fire sprinkler inspections. In our forest, parks, and beach division, you'll see a lot about our tree-related services, storm response, landscape maintenance. In our environmental compliance division, the water sampling, vector cleaning, regional dues, and recycling containers. Again, our materials and supplies for forestry, streets, and facilities maintenance is inclusive of kind of the jump in the Public Works budget. So a few questions that we did receive that I'd just like to address during this workshop is, one of the questions was how much, or is the MUTMITS increasing the budget by $34,800? What I can tell you is we have budgeted $24,000 for MUTMITS. Another question received was about the scenic pathway hardscape renovation. Is there no amount listed for this budget? Why isn't the $100,000 included in that discussion? The Scenic Pathway Hardscape Renovation Project is listed in the capital improvement plan. It's on page 53 and 58 of the recommended budget Funded is noted as $100,000 from the city plus $100,000 donation from Carmel Cares. The next question received was, is $24,000 allocated to landscaping for scenic pathway? Is this part of the $175,000 landscaping budget? And should this be broken out separately or at least discussed? The Public Works Forestry operating budget for contractual service is budgeted at $941,500, which is on page 43 of the recommended budget. Of that amount, $175,000 is earmarked for our landscape maintenance contractor, and $28,000 is allocated to reimburse Carmel Cares for contracted gardening services performed along the scenic pathway. The next question is, or there was just kind of a comment that there wasn't any discussion regarding volunteer hours by Carmel Cares or the city's other volunteer groups in the current year budget book. We normally don't include it. However, the city does continuously applaud all of our volunteer groups. We do have recognition and appreciation for our volunteer hours and services periodically at City Council. Recently, the council did recognize donations from Carmel Cares on December 6th for $150,000 basically of volunteer hours. So we do continuously, appreciate all of our volunteers who have stepped up, especially during, the storm, basically day in and day out, but it is not highlighted in our budget, but we do at council like to always give those those recommendations. One of the questions was about if the council is satisfied with one person in Public Works directly allocated to tree work. And that may be a little bit misleading in the sense of the way that our staffing works is we do have maintenance workers 1, 2, and 3, and we do have 9 employees, and the way that that Bob has really kind of cross-trained. We do have 1 employee who is dedicated as the tree climber and care specialist, but he does work with a team. In addition, not only to the employees, the Public Works Forestry operating budget, when we talked about that $941,000, $600,000 is earmarked for contracted tree care services. So that's in addition, that $600,000 is in addition to, the crews working, in our Public Works department. So again, all of the Public Works field crews have been trained in storm-related tree incidents, and I believe that as council and our members of the public really got to see this in action during our, 12 storms that we had since January. So our Public Works team has done a fantastic job.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
On that amount for Public Works and Forestry, the contracted tree care services are mostly removing trees, correct?
I will let Bob, if you want to come up and...
Because I think it would be interesting to know how much money is actually going into planting new trees, watering new trees, caring for new trees, because the way it's, we don't have any way of telling.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Ferlito. A little bit more details about the contractual services in the forestry budget. What we have is about $275,000 for removals and pruning, $113,500 for stump removals, planting, and watering, $125,000 for storm response, which was a big increase from this current year, $125,000 for arborists and consulting services, and $203,000 for landscape maintenance, which is the $175,000 for the contractor, plus $28,000 for Carmel Cares to do scenic pathway. So I think that adds up to the $941,000.
Thank you very much. I think it's important for the public to see that we are taking care of trees as well as removing trees, so.
Yes, thank you. And this was the last question for Public Works. It was about the state of the bluff around 10th Avenue. The The comment was the entire shoreline infrastructure is currently being evaluated by our environmental, climate change, adaptation, and geotechnical engineering consultants as part of the coastal engineering study. The results of the shoreline condition assessment revealed that seawall number 7 in the vicinity of 10th Avenue does not need repairs, and these were rated as medium priority. Seawall number 6 between 11th and 12th Avenue did not warrant repairs. The CIP proposes to continue the study into phase 2 next fiscal year. This will include further evaluations. In addition, design by a structural engineering firm of the most heavily damaged seawalls are planned to be funded under the Shoreline Infrastructure Repairs Project, as shown in the CIP pages 53 and 58 of the recommended budget. Oh, one more. Was asking about funding for repair and replacement of the beach access wooden stairways and repairs to the stone concrete stairways. Would this be included in the $100,000? So design and initial repairs of the most heavily damaged beach access stairs are planned to be funded under the Shoreline Infrastructure Repairs Project, which has about $250,000, as shown in the CIP pages 53 and 58. And we are also seeking funding from FEMA and the Coastal Conservancy.
So the answer to the question is no. The repairs to the staircases will not be part of the $100,000, which is the grant, which is the donation match from Carmel Cares. That's a separate line item.
So going on to public safety now. First, we'll start off with ambulance. That is, again, very minimal changes. We've got contract services for the City of Monterey station coverage is about $170,000. Billing for ambulance services is $48,000. Admin regulatory oversight is $38,000. Our medical supplies, safety equipment, fuel and vehicle maintenance and training. Then if you look at our fire contract, our contract with City of Monterey is about $2.9 million. The dispatch is about $25,000, and the wildfire risk assessment is about $20,000. So this is where we've budgeted the wildfire risk assessment. In police, again, pretty steady. For contract services, our automated criminal justice system, which is about $95,000. Technology for security cameras, license plate recognition, et cetera, which is about $105,000. Body cameras and tasers, $50,000. County jail, $27,000. Beach patrol, $14,000. We have included safety equipment for our CERT team, which is about $5,000. Also, there's an increase to ammunition of $5,000, our fuel and vehicle maintenance, and then increased training, increased to include critical incident, de-escalation, and racial bias training.
I have another question. The volunteers in policing, where do they show up?
So there's the $5,000 for CERT, and didn't we put $5,000 for the VIP? And we put $5,000 for the VIPs as well.
Good, because they need new uniforms.
Yes, no, we did include the $5,000 for both.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, it's just not on the PowerPoint, but we did. That I'm sure. And on the note of, I call police, we did receive some questions about our overall police statistics, and again, this is really small, but we can, one of the questions was really highlighted towards our crime statistics, which are Part 1 crimes and Part 2 crimes. So this gives since 2018 overview of the crime statistics here in Carmel-by-the-Sea. I do want to just make the note that the 2023 set of data is too small to be of any statistical value. So you will see an updated version at the, January of 2024, so that we have a full year of data to show council the real, overall statistics for 2023.
May I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I appreciate that you did do the crime statistics, but as you note, that the data is too small. And the other thing that I'm concerned with is the new police contract went into effect July of 2022. So if somehow we can break it out from July to July so we can have a comparison of that year rather than January through the end of December.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yes, we can do that. Next going on is to our debt service. So our debt service includes our engine radio, which is about $15,000, Sunset Center, our 2020 refunding lease revenue bond, and we also have, what do we have? Let's see, fiscal year 23-24 payment includes principal and interest of $156,000 following interest-only payments in fiscal year 22-23, and that matures on November 1st, 2032. So again, our debt service is about $500,000. For CIP, I won't go into great detail. I'll just kind of show you the overall version, since I know we've had several conversations and regarding the CIP, but this is again reflective of council's direction through the multiple council meetings that shows the 10.9 in capital projects. So in ending, kind of in closing, just to show our projected fund balance for, I call this fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023, we will have a projected fund balance of about $4.2 million. But when we go into the end of next fiscal year, why we're saying we're dipping, we show that negative $9 million, and that is, again, a lot related to the CIP, which is about $10.9 million. So this is now, I have concluded my presentation on our revenues and on our expenditures, and the executive team is here to answer if you have any other specific department questions or...
When would I ask if council members have any other questions now before I take it out to the public for their comment?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Thank you. You mentioned when you were talking about budgeting for the staffing that you had changed your budgeting policies to budget for higher levels of staff. Can you describe what you've been doing in the past and what you're going to be doing this year? So did you go from I think of them in terms of grades from 1 to 3, or I guess now 1 to 6, or maybe we're still at 1 to 5. Did we go from a 3 to a 4? Did we go from a...
So this is part of, I call part of labor negotiations when we've been, discussing, and I think it took us about a year. We just came to council maybe 6 months ago. Like, for example, when we adopted the maintenance worker 1-2, we had 10 different job classifications in public works. And what we did was we ended up changing those 10 classifications into basically 3, a maintenance worker 1, 2, and a 3. The flexibly classed is a 1-2. So when I say how we've changed the budgeting, it was for all, we have, I think, 7 positions that are maintenance workers 1 or 2. I have them budgeted just at a maintenance worker 2, because eventually they were all, all the employees will make it to a maintenance worker 2. So it's just a very slight, deviation of maybe like a 5% increase, and it just helps, again, allow when and should we get a vacancy, we can hire at a different, the 1 or the 2.
The other way, I'm sorry, were you done? The other way we do it, of course, is that we want to provide flexibly staffed positions, and we want to provide growth opportunities, because as one of the questions that Councilmember Flito asked was our attrition. And when an assistant planner is that top step, how do we keep them here? Well, maybe we provide a growth opportunity for them to move into an associate planner role, and give them increased responsibility. So it's really a growth opportunity for employee, not just attraction, but more so retention.
Okay, so thank you, and I appreciate that and your efforts to retain employees. I'm asking more of I'm not trying to ask a policy question, and I think the answer I got was which I appreciate, was a policy answer on how you intend to retain employees. And what I'm trying to figure out is whether this methodology change that you brought up, Maxine, if there's just an effect to the budget, not the policy. Like, I'm trying to separate out the impact on the numbers that are on the piece of paper from what Maxine said versus the impact of the policy position that you espoused right now. Like, is there a difference, or is it all? Are those two things different, and what are the monetary effects of those two things?
The monetary, if I may?
Yeah.
The monetary effects are that if we underfill a position, then there'll be a positive delta financially at the end of the year. So if we have an associate planner budgeted, but we're filling it at the assistant planner level, for example, the associate planner makes more money, so we'll be saving money at the end of the year, which helps rebuild fund balance.
Okay, thank you. And then earlier in the presentation, Councilmember Ferlito asked a question about the TOT numbers, and you volunteered that our ostensible TOT. I mean, these are my interpretation of your words was 12%, not 10%, because of the HID. And so my question to you is, does any of that 2% come to the city?
No, that's a pass-through. It does not.
Okay, so what is the city's TOT rate? Like
10%.
What is the amount of money that the city collects from the TOT?
10%.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? I don't see any. I'll go out to the public. Is there anybody in the public in the room here wishing to comment on tonight's budget?
Hello, Linda Calafiore, and I'm a new board member for the Friends of Mission Trail Nature Preserve. I'm here to support the budget under your consideration today that includes $15,000 for invasive plant removal and $75,000 for fire fuel abatement in the Mission Trail Nature Preserve. I don't need to tell you how lucky we are that this serene forest exists a short walk from our downtown. The preserve, owned by Carmel-by-the-Sea since its initial formulation in the 1970s, is a 34-acre parkland that conserves a variety of plant and wildlife inhabitants. It includes 3 miles of trails that are used for many recreational and educational activities. Just last week, I encountered a group of school children sitting under the redwood grove participating in an end-of-school drawing lesson. Volunteers for this 501c3 meet monthly to maintain trails, plant new native plants and trees, and remove invasive weeds, a never-ending process. We also help to maintain the Lester Roundtree Native Plant Garden. Members work with our Public Works Department on larger maintenance and planning projects. Over the last few years, we have been lucky to receive grants of almost $300,000 to support our work in the preserve. Board donations and donations from the Rotary Club have totaled $8,800. Friends of Mission Trail have used these funds on trail reconstruction, forest restoration, concept plans for the new Mountain View entrance, invasive plant removal, and most importantly, fire fuel abatement. Reducing the fire threat must be considered our utmost priority. The proposed budget includes $15,000 for invasive plant removal, and that is to fund a contractor for additional efforts to slow invasive plant spread, which is critical to long-term success for their elimination. The alternative is to allow invasive species to take over, which would then compete for scarce water and add to our fire fuel load. The proposed budget also includes $75,000 for fire fuel abatement, and it's critical for the safety of the preserve and the houses that ring the preserve and beyond. This appropriation will be added to the Forestry Division operating budget. During our recent storms, 15 trees fell in the preserve, 21 were heavily damaged and are now leaning, and 7 trees need safety pruning. And this information is, probably a month old by now, so we know more work is done. I implore you to be vigilant towards reducing Carmel-by-the-Sea's fire threat now and in the future by retaining these budget items under your consideration. Stay tuned. Projects under consideration by the Friends of Mission Trail Nature Preserve include the Doolittle Trail Bridge, educational signage, and a redesign of the Rio Road entry to accommodate a link between Mission Trail Nature Preserve and the future bridge to everywhere. Hope to see you on the trail. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it. Is there anybody else in the room here wishing to speak?
Good evening, David O'Neill again. I've been talking with a number of local residents, and they really support the idea of reducing our spending. We're very concerned about possibly going into a recession. Home Depot is seeing a big cut in their sales and stuff like that, so that's an important sign. In doing that, there's there's all these things that we all care deeply about. We want it all to happen, but if we can prioritize some stuff and maybe reduce some of that, that would be in line with a lot of the things that people are concerned about. Also, we're kind of wondering if maybe some of these things that we're thinking we'd like to accomplish, they might not actually be feasible. And so we might not spend the money. So if we could account for some of that, thinking maybe some of this stuff is probably less feasible, we might not get to it, therefore we can look at the budget as lower. That would be encouraging. And I just wanted to say, in regards to like staffing and consultants, I've been trying to volunteer with the city, and unfortunately, because of union regulations, I can't volunteer. So that's a bit of a sad thing, sad state of affairs. But anyway, that's what it is. And I've been talking with the planning commission or planning department about consultants, using some of our very well-educated, intelligent, resourceful people in the community to volunteer to be consultants instead of spending so much money in consultancy fees. Thank you.
Thank you. Refuse the testimony. Is there anybody else wishing to speak?
Good afternoon, Mayor Potter and council members. My name is Amy Herzog. I'm the Executive Director for Visit Carmel. And on behalf of Visit Carmel, we'd like to thank you once again for the opportunity to manage the city's destination marketing program. I have a couple of visual aids, so we're just waiting for that to pop up. Here we go. Great. So, as I said, we are grateful for your investment, not just for the investment, but truly for the strong partnership that we've built over these last couple of years. And as you're aware, Visit Carmel is funded in large part by assessment. And that supports a very robust and integrated destination marketing program. But there's no doubt we're that much more effective due to having the insights provided by having city representation on our board of directors, in this case Chip, who's so actively involved in representing the city's interests and on what is already a very active and involved board of directors. As a destination marketing organization, our objective is to reach that traveler at several different touch points across their travel decision-making journey. And from a strategy perspective, we hone our marketing programs by considering things like seasonality, about portraying an authentic yet world-class brand image, considering target demographics, and also by using the full funnel of marketing tools at our disposal in order to meet those objectives. The city's investment goes a long way in rounding out our marketing program by covering retail, art galleries, events, and performances. And a recent example of ways in which we are broadening our partnerships is with the upcoming Culinary Week. This year, we're really pushing beyond the restaurants out into the community and using a lot of our village assets to help bolster that event. And over the years, we've been very involved in supporting various events and performances and contributing to their success as well. And as a creative example of a way to showcase the walkable nature of our village, the revamped Carmel Wine Walk is not only of great interest to the visitor, who see that as a great reason to either stay longer or come for a return visit, but also very supportive of our retail community. And as you are aware, recently Visit Carmel has embarked on a much more expansive destination stewardship initiative. And we see this as a very foundational part that underlies all of our marketing programs. And our intention is to continue to mindfully grow that initiative. And our goal in this next upcoming months is to continue to work to strengthen the relationship that we have with local organizations that are already working in that space, as well as developing some measurable key performance indicators so we can start to measure and track our success with this initiative. Ultimately, Visit Carmel views our working relationship with the city as being a hugely successful collaboration. And again, just wanted to be here tonight to thank you for your consideration in this year's budget. Thank you.
I've got a question for you.
Actually, we don't ask questions during public comment.
Okay.
We can save them until afterwards. Okay. So thank you, Amy. Appreciate your testimony. Is there anybody else in here wishing to speak tonight?
Hi, Jill Petger, city resident. I just want to echo support for the funding for maintenance of the Mission Trail Nature Preserve. I think any property needs continuous maintenance, and the preserve is no exception. And the fire risk that would increase without maintenance makes it just that much more important. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the room here wishing to speak tonight?
Good evening, Mayor Potter, council members and City Administrator Eric. My name is Lance Wills. As you know, I'm the Executive Director for the Carmel Chamber of Commerce. Firstly, thank you for being part of the luncheon the other day. We felt like it was a great success and we really appreciate your participation. Out of respect, I'm the only person who's going to speak for the Chamber tonight. Sigel Lomas stated 2 weeks ago that the Chamber was requesting to return to 2016 funding of $120,000. We know this is more than that's in the plan, and it's a big ask. The Visitor Centre is projected to cost the Chamber $135,000 in 23-24 years. With current funding levels, this leaves a deficit of about $75,000 for the Chamber. These costs represent about 20% of the Chamber's annual budget. We have every intent on building the Chamber and moving it forward, but to do this, we need to build back. Positions lost during COVID and loss of revenues contributed to this. We're forging new revenue opportunities, building stronger relationships, and finding new ways to work together with partners within the city, Carmel Cares, and Carmel Residents Association. Our speaker series will return next month for the first time since before COVID. We're in talks with inspirational leaders, HR, educational seminars, digital marketing, and much, much more for our business community. Even with our constrained resources, we are furthering our goal to build back. Taste of Carmel this year is going to be bigger and better than ever. We continue to drive our volunteer recruiting and training, and we grow to get our volunteers back on the streets. In our first 4 months of this year, we have greeted more than 5,000 guests at the Visitor Centre, and this number will explode once we're able to be out on the streets with our guests. We're partnering with Silicon Valley Magazine and San Francisco Magazine with an editorial feature about Carmel for their July issue to promote our local businesses and highlight some of our gems in our town. They're excited to partner with the Chamber to support growth in the region. Thank you for your time. We greatly appreciate your personal and financial support for our efforts to drive growth, and thank you for your consideration this evening.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else wishing to speak in the room? All right. I'm going to take a dangerous assumption and guess that Melanie might be the last speaker in here, so we'll go to Zoom World after that.
Hello, Melanie Billig, council members, Mayor, Chip. I would like to speak to you today, thanking you, number one, for this whole process and having enough meetings for all of us to be able to attend. My concern is I'd like to talk to you about the funding for the parking program. I attended one of the meetings the other night at Carpenter Hall, and during the discussion, we heard about all the money we're supposedly going to make from the parking program, but we didn't say anything. No one knew what it was going to cost. There's no O&M expenditures that we can find to understand where you're really going to get, or whether you're really going to get $2.8 million from this program. And I would just like to say, having gone to that meeting and listening to a lot of people in the community very unhappy about it, that right now we have so many things on our plate, especially when I say we, that means all of you sitting up there. I think we're drowning in major issues. The most important one for our community, I think, right now is housing. And so I would encourage you to think about postponing or deep sixing the parking program for a while, and let us all concentrate on what is really our prime concern right now, and that is to get a housing program, an element, completed and done within the proper time frame, and also cut out some of the extra money that we're spending on consultants and going into another major program while we're trying to do housing. So I thank you for all that you're doing, and I know that you have a real job juggling all this stuff, but I think this is not the time to be pushing forward strongly on a parking program we have another priority that's really, really impactful on the community. So thanks a million, and good luck with the budget. I'm glad I'm not having to worry about it.
Thank you, Melanie. All right, is there anybody else inside wishing to speak? Apparently not. We'll go out to Zoom World. Is there anybody in Zoom World wishing to speak? Looks like Fen Horton, you have your hand up, Fen?
Yes. Yes, this is Fen Horton.
Fen, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. As I said, my name is Fen Horton. My mother is a Carmel resident, Marion Joan Horton. I graduated from Carmel High School many years ago. I don't live in Carmel, but I do visit regularly, and I plan possibly to move back into my mother's home someday. The issue I'm asking about today is, I'm asking on behalf of several residents that live along a private road called Acacia Way, which is just off of Flanders Way. Over the years, although Acacia Way is a private road, it has become part of the city's drainage system for stormwater drainage. The water drains down, the city has directed the water to drain down Biscayno and Crespi. It comes down onto Flanders Way, and it hits a berm that the city installed and goes into a sewer drain pipe. I sent an email earlier to all the members of the council explaining the situation again. We've talked with the city engineer, Director Herreri, and we sincerely appreciate the council's willingness to include us in the budget for next year. What I am requesting is if this council would please consider including whatever maintenance the city plans to do for Acacia Way in this year's budget, because every time it rains, it is a real problem for all of the residents along Acacia Way. And I'm speaking about Victoria Beach, Barbara Bukema, Mike Kobler, Michael Harris, Tom Teixeira, and Jeff Walker. And I'm concerned that this road is not going to be usable if there's another large rain. And I would just ask that the city please try to address this situation as soon as possible, rather than making us wait until next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Fen. Carol Hall and then Dale Byrne. Carol, you have the floor.
Yes, after saying let's slow down and have less to deal with, it occurred to me in listening to all this that at some point, if we reintroduced parklets into our city, our village, we could make considerable money off of that, both through the restaurants making more money and also the rental of the parklets making money for the city. So I wanted to just float that idea by you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Dale Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor Potter. I just want to thank the council and the budget process at City Hall for the consideration they've given to the Carmel Cares projects and the work on Scenic Pathway. We're going to put it to good use. I'm also happy to say that we're incredibly close to starting the barrier project, I think is what Bob's calling it, which was allocated $50,000 for materials a couple of years ago. So we hopefully will be starting that within a couple of weeks as we work out getting the encroachment permit going, but our contractor's ready to get going. And I think you're gonna love what it's gonna look like. So hopefully next year we'll be making a lot of progress down on the pathway. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Is there anybody else in the public wishing to speak? I don't see anybody. All right, I'll close the public comment period, bring it back to council for questions and comments. Alessandra, you had a question of Amy Herzog, I believe.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Amy, I just had a question about the online advertising. I figure that it's targeted, but I've just noticed, for example, I am bombarded with those ads nonstop, and I'm probably not the right customer considering I live here. So I was just wondering how the decision is made as far as those online ads, and maybe it needs to be tweaked a little bit.
Amy, do you want to come up and respond?
Well, we have various campaigns running on digital, so I don't know if you're talking about the destination stewardship ads or Culinary Week, because those are both ads that we'd be running locally.
It's the destination one with the little heart.
Yeah. Okay. So stewardship ad. I don't know if you have an out of area phone that was registered somewhere else originally, but it's supposed to be geofenced. So it's supposed to target people who are coming in from out of area and then land in our area. The phones are supposed to receive that destination stewardship messaging, but I do sometimes get it as well. So we can have that checked. But yeah, that's a technology issue that we can look and make sure it's tweaked properly.
Yeah, it's on my computer as well at home. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, that said, if it's on your computer, if it's a social media ad, not to get too technical, then that's based on phone. If it's a Google placement ad, that might be based on the topics that you're searching. So, but we can definitely double check and tweak and make sure that we're not over targeting local people.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, council members, discussion, direction.
And Mr. Mayor, there were several questions that whenever you're ready, I can try to answer.
Have at it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. O'Neill asked about union regulations due to for volunteering, and there is a pretty rigorous restriction that the city cannot use volunteers to do work that's part of a represented employee's work program or job description. So I'd like to get you a little bit more from Mr. Pierick on that in writing. So let me put a pin in that for now, please. Mr. Mayor, we got Councilmember